Hello, Old School RuneScape. Welcome to our weekly live stream on this lovely Thursday. It's Thursday evening, 28th of January. I am delighted to be joined by my guests, Mod MikeD and Mod Kieren. Behind the scenes, we have got Mod Spear and Mod Druid. Also got Mod Sani on chat. Any questions? At Old School RS, he'll put them through to us. Now, this is an exciting stream because we are streaming on Twitch, we're streaming on YouTube, and we're also streaming on Steam, which I think will take me through to the announcements. And then I'll let the other guys talk as well. Okay, first up, exclamation mark game update. You should head to Morton and dig into some new content. The catacombs have been updated with new shades to fight, new chests to loot, and all new rewards and armors. Use exclamation mark game update to find out more. Next up, exclamation mark equipment. Now, you might not have heard about this, unlikely, but the equipment rebalance, that's a thing. Anyway, last week we said that we wanted to rebalance some stuff. We've been listening to your feedback, we've updated the blog, exclamation mark equipment to learn more. Also with yesterday's game update came some testing worlds, so you can log into any world marked in blue to test out some of the recent equipment proposals, including the blowpipe and black d'hide, and other stuff too. We'll talk about the equipment rebalance a bit later. Now, the last announcement, and a very, very exciting one, exclamation mark Steam. So we are delighted to announce that Old School is coming to Steam on February 24th. We would like you to help make our launch great. Please, exclamation mark Steam, head to the link, add us to your wish list, and to learn more about the launch itself as well. Oh, okay, that is all of the announcements. So now I'm going to go to you guys and we'll answer some questions. First up is a nice, easy one. I'll start with Mike, then we'll go to Kieren. How are you, Mike?
I'm good. I'm very excited. Watching the stock market, spending a lot of my time there.
Buy up Zammy Brews. The billionaires of RuneScape are trying to short the brew market.
To the moon.
It is mad though, isn't it? What a mad thing we're all watching happen.
Is that it for you? How are you? Yeah, I'm good. I'm watching the stock market.
Well, we're busy. We got a lot going on. We got a lot, we're roadmap planning. We're doing we're doing stuff. Hey, we're going to Steam. Yeah. That's a thing. That's going to be fun.
We've got questions about other stuff a little bit later on. So now, Kieren, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Feeling really good. But yeah, I am in a good mood. I'm enjoying this GME thing, like Mike said. It's just great. All I can think of is the old merch clans from like 2008, 2009. Remember, it's like Smoke and Mills. You tell you to buy up watermelons and drive the price up when there was a trade restriction in RuneScape. Like, it's just all I can think of. It's the same comparison.
Well, that's really the upside, right? When you think about it, is if you think about, I think somebody was sharing a tweet earlier in Slack about, old school, WoW, like all these different games that, people were pretty savvy about the market, right? Of watching trends and all that stuff. So it's not really that odd that we're all diving into this and we figured it out. It's not, it's not rocket science per se.
We've been studying the market for years.
Inadvertently.
Yeah.
Okay. Very quick summary. How have you guys? It's been a while since you've both been on stream at the same time. So I say, what have you been up to since then? I think Mike, we haven't seen you since December. How have things been? What have you been up to since you've been back in the office or virtual office?
Well, I've just been recovering. We're doing a lot of planning, right? The entire studio is doing a lot of planning there. We've been in the news recently. So I've been devoting some of my time to dealing with all that stuff. So, good news. A lot of upside in our future, a lot of positive investment in our future. So yeah, it's going to be good.
Okay, let's move on to some questions. Yeah, go on, Kieren.
I was just going to say all the awesome projects that we've been going through lately, like our release schedule for the next couple of months looks real strong. We've been having a lot of discussions about that the last few days, sorting out sort of week by week which one's going to go when. So those discussions are the sort of discussions we have all the time, just trying to work out exactly how we're going to release things, making sure it's all ready, etc. So yeah, fun and games, honestly.
So a bit later on, we've got a question about the roadmap we shared in December as to whether or not that's still accurate. So we'll get to that then, and then maybe we can walk through some of that hardcore planning you guys have been working on the last few days. All right, okay. What I want to do is let's take some equipment rebalance questions first. Now, first, I want to get into an update on the status of the rebalance. So last week, obviously, we published a blog. Then earlier this week, we revised the blog based on your feedback. Then lots more feedback came in. So we are in the, what we're up to right now is going through that feedback. Team are going to be meeting to discuss any more changes. And then next week, I think something just fell off my wall. Anyway, next week. That's a vinyl as well. That's not good. My bad. Anyway, equipment rebalance. This is my technique. I distract people from the blowpipe nerf by letting the stuff fall from my house.
That was scheduled. You had a little string under the desk.
Okay, right. What we're doing, equipment rebalance. We are working through your feedback. We're going to meet, and then we're going to publish another proposal next week. In the meantime, we really encourage you to go and play on the test worlds. Try your hand on the content as it is described in the blog, and then use that to give us even more feedback. Now, nobody asked, but the three of us weren't on the stream last week, I don't believe. So I think let's share our own opinion and answer questions about the equipment rebalance that weren't necessarily voiced last week. Mike, I would like to ask you first of all, how did you guys approach rebalancing, buffing, and nerfing stuff in the MMOs you've worked on, like Dark Age, Warhammer Online, WildStar and stuff? I imagine different MMOs, different games, like I said, class-based. So I'd be interested to hear about how you handled it then.
Well, it's funny because when we started looking at Blowpipe and all these other, evaluating it and looking at its power and how do you handle these things. So I thought back, Dark Age, right? We had, again, I don't know how many people are familiar with Dark Age, but, Dark Age, a lot of PvP. And we had this thing called Left Axe, right? And then there was this nerf to Left Axe. Nerf Left Axe became a big meme. Well, back in the day, it was a big meme. T-shirts were made. It was a thing. And it really came down to, if I'm remembering it correctly, and it's a long time ago, there was a mistake when it was put into game and we weren't looking at something, and then it turned into Zerkers had it, but then also Shadow Blades had access to this ability, and then Left Axe was one of the they had a style that really leaned into it, and then all of a sudden this stealth class had this thing, so we had to nerf it. It had to be handled. It was really more about game integrity. It was more about, hey, we're going to move forward, and if we're going to move forward, we have to look at this, right? We have to make sure that that the balance is preserved so we can continue to make more things, newer things, and it's just something that you need to do. It's not always fun. It's not always but it is required. It is something you need to do, right? We did the same thing in Age of Reckoning, right? Warhammer. We wanted to launch in 22 classes, and then it became readily apparent that balancing all those classes was going to be a problem. And then we had classes that were on beta that we had to kill well into development because some of them were overpowered, some of them weren't. We had to kill them. And then WildStar, there was a whole thing about rating and requirements, and we needed to look at that, and we ended up we nerfed that and made it a little bit easier for people to get into because, we thought, oh man, this is going to be great, this is a thing, but it didn't translate into reality when it was live. And some of, again, the Left Axe thing was in for a while before we nerfed it, right? Like, sometimes you have to go back and look at it, and it's really for the health of the game, and it's really for the, longevity of it, right? You need to manage these things. And again, as I mentioned, sometimes it's not easy. And the hope is that, and especially for old school, because I've never worked on a game with this kind of interaction between devs and players, it's super important to get that feedback. And then we can together figure out the best way forward. And I think, to your point, I think we're doing that. I think we're doing it right now.
Great. Okay, Kieren, I'd love to hear your thoughts about on the approach this time around as well. So, think back to 2017, just before I joined the old school team, actually. We nerfed Void Range, and I was going through some old YouTube videos the other day, like looking at the reaction to that nerf back then. There was a comment on the vid. I think it might have been from Veeractric's coverage of that nerf, like from nearly four years ago now. The comment was something like, "This is the biggest mistake they've ever made. I can't believe they've done this. They're not even changing it, despite there being riots in Falador or something." I think what I quite liked about that could literally have been taken from the events of like the last week, from the response to our announcement then too. So back then, I'm looking at the patch notes, right? And you guys it looked like you hit it below the world map. Was that the case?
I would consider it a stealth nerf is what happened back then. I mean, our approach was nowhere near as good. Item. We hadn't learned from until we'd done that. And I think the discussions at the time were to like, we don't want to do it. We don't want to have time for people to discuss it, and because it was other items involved. I think I can't remember exactly what else was done. Didn't want it to affect the economy, etc. Cert Helm. I think that would have been it. It would have been, we don't want to affect the economy and have people buy and sell things and profit off the discussion. But it was clearly a mistake what happened back then to just do it, and that's why this time and every other time we've even discussed changing the value of items, we'll discuss it. That's the backbone of how we run this game now, and discussing it's been valuable, because you know what, if we didn't discuss it, we'd have went with the original proposed blowpipe nerf, which I think people have rightly pointed out was too much of a drastic change, leaving a massive gap between that and the better weapons like T-bow. So yeah, I think the approach this time was, okay, let's work out. We ran numbers, we ran DPS figures. We knew how strong the nerf was, but we thought, okay, based on how strong blowpipe is, how cheap it is, it's so universally the best pretty much across the majority of content. Okay, this is maybe right. But that's why we discuss it and we get the input and then revisit it and say, okay, some good points have been made. Let's find an alternative approach, which has been to add the strength value to the darts, such that we can have that spread, keep Rune and Dragon darts pretty good. And I think now we're in a place where most people are fairly happy with the blowpipe. Obviously, the blowpipe isn't the only item involved, but still, the core of the approach, I think, is right, that we're discussing it. Everyone's aware, everyone has a chance to input on it, and we'll iterate and iterate until we get it right. There's never really going to be an intention where we're just going to say, this is what you're having. We know you all hate it, we're just going to do it. That's why we're going back and forth, trying to understand what the community thinks, so that we can answer the questions and try and put across why are we deciding to do this to D'hide or to the blowpipe, etc. Anyway, I think the approach is the right one. I'm not saying we're always going to get it, it's going to be perfect. I like that we're doing the beta so that players actually have a chance to actually use the equipment in the relevant content, etc. There's probably more we could do. I think we could probably do more surveys and things like that. Try and capture what different communities think a little bit more. Because you know what? The view of a skiller is probably very different to the view of a PVMer versus the view of an Ironman versus the view of a PKer and all the different types of PvP. Like, for some communities, people are, oh yes, this is a big win. For some communities, they're not. They're upset about some of the changes. And that's a tough balancing act because we're trying to make everything work for everyone. But anyway, I could just keep blabbing and talking words, but I'm just trying to sort of mind dump of what I've thought of this whole thing. But what I do really like is that the team, particularly a few people on the team who've put so many hours in, working all night, watching and reading all these comments, the community team reading and responding to everything as much as they can, the designers spending time in spreadsheets running numbers and DPS values endlessly, trying to work out something in an approach that would work for the blowpipe. So, particularly the blowpipe. So, yeah. If there's any questions on the back of that, I'm happy to try and dive into the right spots. But
I'm seeing a fair few questions pop up about the Rebalance itself, which I'm hoping, like, will offer a lot more clarity on next week when we've met as a team. Well, by that time we'll have met as a team and we'll be going with our like revision for the proposal. People asking about how we're going to handle things like personal bests and those kind of things, which are actively being discussed. And I think obviously maybe the elephant in the room is the fact that we aren't polling this change, which is a really difficult decision to make. But I mean, if I'm asked about why that is, I think all I can do is really point to maybe previous polls where it's evident that players aren't going to vote for what is a nerf to the gameplay that they engage in. Like we polled kind of nerfing Nightmare Zone and the ability to just splash and 6-hour timer. And then ultimately, we were kind of held to account that this was a change we had to make. Similarly, I think, didn't we poll way back early in the days, should we hide things like poll results? And then that failed. And then we couldn't move for like months without being told that you have to hide poll results. It has to, so there are things that need to be integrity changes. That is, I guess, my outlook, my opinion on that matter. But we're not treating it lightly. This isn't just like a shits and giggles thing. Let's rile up the entire community by changing their favorite weapons and stuff.
I mean, on the topic of polls, we have talked about having a proper polling charter. It's something we have put time into thinking about. It's never going to be as crystal clear as like, this is a hard rule, this is the sort of stuff that gets pulled, this is the sort of stuff that we could not pull. It's going to be sort of a charter that maybe talks about the sort of things we should be pulling, the sort of things we shouldn't, but it's maybe quite a blurry line to try and define. But we want to define that so that that charter is what we can agree on between the community and us as a dev team, which you could then rightly hold us to, because we've got to get it right. Like the whole backbone of this game is this polling system. The community tell us that through surveys again and again. But like exactly the example you just pointed out, Sween, hiding poll results, I think has been a very positive change for the game. So was getting rid of people doing Nightmare Zone while they slept and things like that the community actually voted down originally. So yeah, we've got to tread carefully, but that's why I want to be super open about it and have these communications while we're putting it out in blogs, trying to listen to community feedback, etc.
And what's encouraging to see is that, right, I think the community reaction was entirely expected. And none of us expected the players to say, cool, awesome, I love that you're doing this to the weapon I use every single day. We expected there to be pushback, and we expected there to be negativity. But I feel like now most of the negativity has gone from, I don't know, outright insults. But more to do, now there is more constructive feedback, more of, okay, have you considered this change rather than this change? This change will be less impactful than this change, and so on. Which is promising to see. It does make me think that we're on the right track. Okay, Kieren, I'm going to come to you for this question. Next question. So obviously, one of our justifications for making a change is that it's going to help us better manage power creep for, like, you know, the longevity of the game. Mm-hmm. So next question is, what is the team's long-term plan for power creep? What's the team's plan so that there's not a cyclical nature of nerfing content to be able to add new content? Which I think is a very valid point. You know, we're making this change to manage power creep. Is this going to be a yearly occurrence?
I've heard the context of like, okay, we want to release a new piece of content next year. Let's nerf all the top stuff now so we can fit some new stuff in without power creeping the entire game. Look, that's a right thing to be concerned about, but that's absolutely not what we're trying to do. I think if you look at the weapons, the stuff we're nerfing right now, I mean, the other two that are big, like, had a lot of feedback, particularly D'Hide and Bulwark, but the main one was Blowpipe. That we're addressing. Now, I don't think that's a recent problem. I don't think this is certainly not a cyclical thing, but the Blowpipe has been far and away incredibly strong since it was launched. Start of, was it 2014? 2015? Must have been 2015. Yeah, 2015. Because I think there was this big discussion about, was it intended to be 2 ticks or 3 ticks? It's been 3 ticks on Rapid and PvP since shortly after launch. And the DPS values for this thing were just such... I mean, it wasn't power creep at the time, it was a power leap, right? And we filled gaps below Blowpipe quite well. Obviously, we've got the odd thing like Twisted Bow, but they feel okay. We made some small changes to Twisted Bow in the blog, but its rarity, its value, it's the content it comes from, it's difficult to get hold of, etc. And we can balance around it very easily. That felt right. Blowpipe was just so universally doing well in places where it really probably shouldn't. The fact you could take Blowpipe to General Grador and do really well with it doesn't feel right to me. That always felt wrong. I mean, not even, it's only one example, of course. But the goal longer term is, sure, we've got to get things in the right place that they deserve to be. The changes we're making with this has also helped providing clarity in terms of the levels that are required. Really, that's mostly about making it more obvious that something that requires level 78 is expected to generally be better than something that requires level 75, for example. So we make the gaps more clear. That'll help us because we can know where it helps us know where the gaps are and communicate to you, the community, when we're pitching these things, where they fit. But really, it's about finding the right niches, and it's about finding the right places where we can uptick a little bit. I mean, take armor, for example. Bando's armor has been essentially the best in slot for melee since we released God Wars ages ago at this point. Obviously, we've had Inquisitors come in for certain cases. But there are spaces where you think, okay, we've got no degradable melee armor. Maybe that's a space. It's always trying to find a trade-off. And those trade-offs come from a few different things. I mean, melee has slash, stab, and crush for one. We can play with the different styles. We can play with high offensive, low defenses, etc. We can play with degradability, the rarity, how tough things are to get, etc. So I think there's a lot still that we can play with. And to be honest, while we have, I think, made mistakes, Blowpipe included, some people have brought up the twisted bows. Maybe that's too much. But overall, Powercreep compared from 2013 to 2021, we're about to hit our 8th anniversary. Old School's done a relatively good job of holding it back. Not perfect, certainly, and arguably we could have done better in places. But if you compare 2013 to 2021 Old School, compared to like 2007 RuneScape to 2013, we've learned from some of the mistakes RuneScape did in that period, right? They brought in huge prayer buffs, they brought in new potions, etc. We've got the benefit of hindsight. That's a huge benefit when we're approaching it now and really trying to do well to hold it back. We know it's important for the community. We know it's important for the longevity of the game as well. How soon is it you're going to be just smashing 99s on everybody, max hitting, one hit killing people? We can't hit in that. We can't get to that situation. So yeah, it's something we're paying very careful attention to. I wouldn't say there's a concrete plan that we're going to target this area, then this area, then this area, but it's something that we do want to think much more about, because if we're going to release new PVM content, be it a new raid in future, be it another boss, it does need rewards. Otherwise, no one's going to do it. It needs incentive to go and play that content. I don't know if that maybe that helps to answer the question, but. And by the way, one additional point.
When you mentioned bandos and armor, I thought you were talking about Armadale rather than actual equipped armor.
Bandos armor, the word, yeah, sorry. Yeah. But one point, and I just want to play devil's advocate, because I have done this internally as well when we've discussed this. How is this change required to Blowpipe? I think everyone could probably agree it's overpowered, but is it damaging the game? I think it's existed for, 6 years now, right? The game's doing well. People are enjoying the game. The game does exist and can still continue to exist and be great. The reasons for the change are to increase that diversity, give more purpose to wider bits of content and new content. That's where it comes in. At the end of the day, the game still will exist. It's not going to go away because of that. But yeah, so we have actively discussed whether this is the right thing to do and the right approach to it. And I feel like now it's a pretty darn good balance.
All right, let's put a pin on the equipment rebalance stuff for now. If we have any questions from the chat coming in, we'll cover them later. We've got all kind of questions to go through, and obviously there's a few Steam-related questions as well. I think what I'd like to do is, and I'm really sorry, Mike, for the next one, put you on the spot a little bit. Players are drawing parallels between the equipment rebalance and the Duel Arena, because they feel like we should make changes on hold. We've been talking about changes for quite a while. So is there any update on the Duel Arena discussions that we alluded to back in December?
God, how? Yeah, you should apologize to me. How did you not tell me about any of these questions to begin with? Fine. Okay. We literally had a meeting about this a couple days ago. We have a, God, I don't know how much I can, I don't want to, we are going to fix it. We've decided how we're going to fix it. We even know how we're going to implement the change to help reduce this across the board, right? Real, and I always stumble on this one, real world trading is an issue and we need to get on top of it, and we are. And the change is coming, but I can't, obviously, because of the reasoning behind it, I can't really say when, and we need to get in line. We need to get a larger plan with the studio so we're all on the same page when we pull the trigger on this, but it will be fairly soon. So, we haven't forgot about it. It's just we had a lot going on and we wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing. So there's an old phrase, measure twice and cut once. We just wanted to make sure we had all of our ducks in a row before we pulled the trigger on this, and we do as of like 2 days ago. So I don't know what more I can say than that, than letting any of the you know what I mean? Like we may have talked a little bit about what we wanted to do, and it's very much in line with that, but the details need to be blurry because of the nature of what we're dealing with.
And the key thing is, it's on our agenda. We are moving in the right direction and expect news in the nearish future.
I mean, you said more than I was expecting you to. The question was, has there been any updates? Are you still talking about it? I think I would have settled for yeah, we're still talking about it, but cool.
I would rather be transparent than, try to couch it again. I would just say what's going on, except for the fact that, there are people that were making these changes to try to eliminate that whole situation, and I don't want to cause a stir while we're trying to. God, I can't be any more cagey than this. I wish I could be more transparent.
I'm assuming we'll be.
Very soon.
So, okay, we'll move on from that question then. Okay, Kieren, I think this is a question probably well answered by you. Classics asks, what are the plans to keep endgame players interested in the game? Probably referring to, the last raid was Theatre of Blood quite a while ago now.
Yep. So obviously raids are sort of obviously categorized as proper endgame content. I see bossing and new bosses generally fit that as well. What I think is, if we look back retrospectively a little bit, that I don't think Nightmare scratched that itch as much as we might have hoped as well. It's not been a boss that people have exactly wanted to keep on going back to. For maybe a number of reasons. I think we try to tick too many boxes. Long distance from a bank. You can't do too many bosses per trip, etc. God War style drop table, which I don't think we really hit that either. It doesn't feel rewarding. It takes too long to get a loot. Anyway, lots of different things. So that, I think, has been missing, and that's how I get the feeling of where the endgame players are currently bringing this issue up. We do have the Combat Achievements project coming soon, and I think that is going to scratch that itch in the near future quite well. There's a whole ton of things that are going to push the top end, certainly, in terms of adding speedrun tasks to different pieces of content. A task like, I'll give an example from what our current design thinking is, like kill the alchemical hydra with Darox without ever having more than 10 health. Like, somewhat silly things as well that just add a bunch of different cool challenges to content. Now, that's just the near future. Down the line, obviously, we're going to do more PVM content. And down the line, of course, at some stage, there'll be another raid. We are thinking about these things. We know it's important to deliver that. And yeah, it's a shame so many things have... It's a shame so many things we were sort of doing before that, in a sense. But I think it's probably right that we address things like clans and group Ironman, etc., before we dive into another proper big endgame raid or boss for players. We want to make sure we do it right as well. I think Theatre of Blood does a lot of things very differently to Chambers of Xeric. I don't know if it was perfect. I think Chambers of Xeric has had a much bigger impact on the game than Theatre of Blood has. But what we want to is learn from what we've done from both raids, make sure we offer something new and cool and unique, and it fits its place in the game. Also, we need some awesome rewards if we're ever to do another raid too. Which does mean we getting these equipment rebalances right now really helps to make that space much more clear when we do come to doing that sort of thing in future. And I think, nor do we need to put all our eggs in the basket of new raids, because I'd say with a raid, you're spending months and months of development time and a huge graphics budget, when also we can do bosses more frequently because they're a lot cheaper to actually develop, but could still maybe scratch that itch as well. But yeah, it's about being smart. About being smart about updates. I would say there's not exactly a plan, so to speak, but it's the balance of our roadmap needs to account for different player types, and we are aware that more and more players are obviously sat in that sort of maxed or close to maxed bracket, thinking there's not a ton for me to do anymore.
And we want to make sure we give content for those players. I think what separates us from, say, other MMOs, and no disrespect to MMOs, I love them, I play a lot of them, that are more expansion-led. You'll see people purchase the expansion, resub for a month or two, wipe through the content, and then stop playing. Whereas with old school, we do tend to have like more of I hate using the word retention because it sounds so like businessy, but because of the nature of old school's game content, we do tend to retain those players more. It's just more repeatable rather than the expansion-led games. Right, we're nearly halfway through the stream. I know in recent streams, ModEase has been showing off some awesome content from the community. I think we've got some of that to show. I haven't seen it myself, so I'll be surprised as well. So ModSpirit, if you could start showing off some of the UGC, the user-generated content we've got, then afterwards we'll come back to questions, and we've got questions about polling group Ironman, questions about making skilling more rewarding, so some good stuff to get into, and of course Steam as well. Right, what is this? I've got some descriptions. I don't really have a description, I've got a title. This title is Tinderbox Dating. Creator Jungle Liquor from subreddit.
Well, you know what I like about this? It's the small details on the side panels, the different icons for your equipment is an I Love New York t-shirt. That's good.
This is the Templar of Zamorak by Jukanos. That looks pretty cool. I'd love to see, I haven't seen the Reddit thread, but I'd love to see if there's a pitch to how to get that in game, because that would be sweet as. Usually, I'm not a big fan of the massive shoulder pauldrons with spikes and stuff all over it, but I do like the look at this. Unless you go really over the top, like Warhammer's Emperor with his giant bloody armor.
Yes.
I like stuff that's got a distinctive shape and silhouette because, obviously with old school, you're not talking tons and tons of detail on each piece. So when there's a distinctive shape to the helmet or whatever, it gives the set a really strong identity. So that's cool.
Oh, this is sweet. This is from Angry Elo Design. Nice little house tab.
That's nice.
It's very nice. What's next? Oh, I did see this one. This is by Rome the Bard, Player versus Nightmare. Yeah, Inquisitor Mason's getting lodged in.
There is a lot of detail in that paintwork, isn't there?
That's sweet.
The Nightmare looks suitably disgusting.
Those warts and boils are nasty. And what's next? The last one we got, title You Dare Disturb My Rest by Fobrow or Fobro.
That's cool.
Very cool. Like how soft the image looks. It almost looks cute. Thank you very much, community. Please keep sending us artwork. one thing I'd really like to do is revisit what I think the RuneScape website used to do way back in like 2006. It's like a monthly assortment of player submitted artwork, that kind of player gallery thing. And I know our associate art director is really keen on showcasing more old school stuff too. So let's formalize. Let's put in boring processes to highlight really cool creative stuff. Cool. Thank you very much, Mudspear, and thank you everyone who submitted art. Let's get back into the questions. Okay. I'm open this to anybody who wants to jump in. This is from Obox, who asks, when can we expect content discussions and polls about features for Group Ironman? Things like shared player-owned houses, shared bank spaces, shared collection log, etc. I understand the release of Group Ironman is a ways away, but I think these discussions should start well before development starts.
I mean, to be honest, we started having these discussions 2 years ago. These discussions are almost certainly also part of clans, because what Group Ironman's going to do is use the clan technology as the basis for Group Ironman. So things that clans are going to be able to do, hopefully we hope to do something similar for Group Irons, basically. Behind the scenes, the clan system is basically just a set of groups, right? It's a name associated with a bunch of players, and you'll be able to be a part of multiple groups. One for clans, and then maybe we'll make the second group your Group Ironman group. That's the sort of thing of how it's going to work. So all of these things will naturally come up, because you know what? Shared bank space is a request that comes up for clans, etc. too. As for details like shared collection log, not sure yet. I think it's a good idea, certainly something to explore. I don't see why not, to be honest. I think the clan system technology will let us do that if we really wanted. But yeah, no, we've got a basic understanding of how we want Group Ironman to work, but we'll be diving into that once we're done with clans. And trust me, we can't wait. Everyone in the chat, every stream, always saying, talk about Group Ironman. And obviously, we've said it a lot of times that it'll be after clans, but I can't wait, because I know it's an update that a lot of people have wanted for a long time. I know there's a lot of, even a lot of the streamers are looking forward to it. There's a lot of groups of people that are like, can't wait to form teams. It's going to be a fun one. So we do want to make sure we get it right, but it's a little bit further out yet. Can't remember exactly where in our roadmap it fits, but yeah, it'll be basically the team will be moving to develop it as soon as they've done with clans. So,
well, I mean, look, I don't. Again, I'm not one to keep this stuff to myself, but I mean, we've been talking about how we can get even further out. How do we get further out in front of blogs? How do we get this stuff into players' hands even earlier than that? So, I mean, yeah, we don't have to talk about it today. We should probably take this offline. But yeah, I don't have a problem. I mean, we have a pretty good list already put together, fleshed out. Clans is well on its way. Like, all these things are being worked on. And, I mean, just to stimulate conversation, I don't have a problem getting this stuff out there, as long as everybody doesn't freak out.
Right? No, I think it's fun, Mike. I think talking early is a good thing, and that means redefining expectations a little bit, because, you know, normally people are quite used to us putting a blog out and releasing the content not too long after. Starting to have conversations earlier, let's prepare better, take on more feedback, etc. But yeah, I think once we're at the sort of the release of like combat achievements and Temperos, the fishing skill boss, we'll have a lot more time. Just focus on some big creative work, like nailing out the details for Group Ironman to get to a position where we can actually start talking about it.
Fair.
We have, I guess, began trying to do that, but I'm quite conscious of trying not to do too much too soon. So we ended the year having polled in quite short succession. Combat achievements, Temperos, Kingdom Divided, new spellbook, that kind of thing. Well, the reworked spellbook rather. And I can't really think of another time in Old School's history where we've had 3 big pieces of content like that haven't been released but are still just pending, like being worked on, having passed the poll. Now, I think that's awesome from our perspective in terms of, okay, we know what the community want to be added to the game and we can work on it without worry of it failing. similarly, I think it is good for players because, they've got a really solid idea. This is definitely coming to the game. But then I do wonder if we get to a point where, we've got 10 dev teams and then we've got this massive list of 15 things being out-polled and we're all working in separate corners of, let's think post-pandemic, separate corners of the office. And then we're trying to juggle release dates or my new bit of content will interact with another bit of content. I think that's when we might have to rethink things. But for now, with our small but growing team, it works well, getting ahead.
And that's, honestly, that's what it is. Yes, you just kind of made me chuckle a little thinking about how we've staffed up a lot, right? And at least for me, it goes back to the idea that because we're never going to do MTX, because those things aren't ever going to be in the cards for us, it's all about delivering value for players who are subscribing, right? And the team has always been very tight-knit, very, I don't want to say small, but, lean. It's been a very lean team, and we've staffed up, and I don't know if we can talk about this, but we staffed up a lot, and we got a lot of headcount in over the last couple months, right? And those people are already working on new pieces of content because the idea is deliver you more, right? So I think we're going to hit that point. Like, I do think probably soon we're going to hit that, maximum density point where it's like we really shouldn't be bringing more dev. Like, we got all the devs we need. Now let's double down on engineers. Let's get more art people in there doing what they do, graphics, and I think we're even getting close to that now. So I agree. I don't think we're ever going to have 10 dev teams simultaneously working because then we would end up losing touch with the players, right? We'll find the perfect mix, I'm sure of it. But, first and foremost is my goal is just make sure that we're giving more to the players for what they're giving to us.
So on the topic of growing recently, obviously this month there is no Gazette for January. We've had other stuff to work on, I'm afraid, like the Steam announced this week. So the first Gazette of the year will be February. But we do have lots of new JMods and we'll be introducing you to them in February. But I guess now we could say like the number of people we've brought on since the beginning of this year, so the last few weeks alone, I've counted 5 or 6. So like senior dev, junior dev, new CM, new senior concept artist, new senior engine dev. Like this is just since January. Like this month we're in right now.
Yeah. I've onboarded 3 new content devs in the last 2 months. That's the heads I was wondering higher for now. So, it gives a lot of perspective about how many people we're bringing in because the goal is to be equipped to deliver content to a level of quality that it needs to be delivered to, get more releases out and not have so many dry periods in the year where we're not maybe a month or 2 without having a solid release. Like, we're going to equip ourselves as well as the other ambitions, like launching on Steam and expanding where we take this game. So they take work too. And now our team can do both, right? Deliver content and tackle these almost growth initiatives for the game.
So I've seen a question in the chat, which is why more devs, why not anti-cheating or support reps as well? So we've just listed the people we work directly with on the old school team. But the anti-cheating team has grown. I think they're up to it's either 6 or 8 like dedicated anti-cheating mods now. You might notice that they're being a lot more active on our socials as well, sharing more insight into the number of players they've banned, the types of content they're looking at specifically. Same for customer support, like the non-cheating members of the support team too. Like they are increasing the size of their team. Also ready for things like Steam, because we know more people will be coming in, more players will need help, just making sure they're on hand to be able to support those players too. So the people we list with the Gazette typically are just direct members of the old school team. We don't really talk about everybody Jagex has hired across the studio. Because that has been a lot of people over the last year or so.
This company's hired, given the pandemic, like, oh my God, we've hired so many people as a company. We won't fit back in the office as it stands. So like that's a problem Jagex have got to solve and work out how we move forward there too. It's not even just more anti-cheating people. It's like investment in their tools and everything too to help them work more efficiently. So, there's an awful lot going on, even out in the rest of the business, that's in the right direction.
And the thing you mentioned, Alec, the idea of, safety, security, all those things. I don't know. Again, I don't know how much I can say about it, but it is actively being worked on. It is a number one. The studio is responding, and we are getting what we need to make it right. And it is a super high priority for the studio to support our team with those things that you mentioned. And I don't think I should probably say anymore.
But we can't wait to be able to talk about those things. I think there's, and I hate doing it because it sounds like we're just telling lies, but there's so many projects we're just sitting on that we can't talk about yet that we know will make players infinitely happy in, but we can't just yet, which is nice to have.
And I know, and I know for a fact that if we're not lying, and if we are, then you guys are absolutely the ones that are going to call us on our shit. So it's happening. It's happening. You'll see.
All right, I want to get into some questions about Steam shortly, because that is the big news, and I will be lambasted if I don't use this stream to push Steam and make you all go and wishlist it. But for now, a question I want to ask is about the December Gazette and stream. We shared roadmap plans. The question I got is that roadmap plan still accurate? Has anything changed over the new year? And even more imminently, I'm seeing people in the chat. Has anything changed since ownership of Jagex changed? Lots of loaded questions there.
Well, I mean, nothing as far as I know. I mean, they talked about, again, I don't know any of the inner details of this whole Jagex change in hands thing. I mean, this has happened, I think historically, this has happened a couple times in the history of Jagex. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to change anything fundamentally. The team is still the team. They're still working on what it is. Again, I can't beat this drum hard enough. I feel like I do it every time we do a stream. There will be no MTX. MTX isn't happening. So you got nothing to worry about in that regard. And the roadmap, I believe, like I said, now I'm trying to think back. Like I'm going to have to go look now. It's like, what did we show then? But I mean, again, to be completely honest with you, we had everybody in a room earlier today. Product folks, devs, Scrum leads, release manager, the whole 9 yards, to look at that roadmap and say, are we still tracking? And arguably, the only real wiggle we see is because we want to give you guys more time to feedback into the process. So other than that, the whole Q1 of this year is packed. So it should be good.
So I do have a picture of the roadmap we shared up. It's entirely still as we said it would be. A few things are swapped around a little bit. I guess I can. I'll talk about it now, right? So initially we said mainly because we've already shared the roadmap. Well, by the next Gazette, some of this would have passed. So let's look at like combat achievements. In the Gazette from 2020, we said it would be released early February. That's not looking likely now. That's looking more like to be, early March. But in response, we'll bring something else forward. That kind of little swap around.
And that has more to do with the fact that we wanted to get people's feedback, and we have Steam, right? Which we weren't really talking about at the time. We couldn't really talk about the actual date, right? Because we had to get things squared away with Valve. We had to get things squared away with our marketing team and all that good stuff. So now that we're talking about it openly, it's fit in here where we kind of thought it would. So again, we're talking a week here, a week there, maybe a sprint. Nothing insane. Just, we want to make sure we're delivering a great deal of content in the first quarter. And then we have all those big drops we talked about throughout the rest of the year. Plans, Group Ironman. Again, I'm afraid now just to say things and not sure what we saw in the old one versus the new one, of things coming up with certain pieces of content and quests and all these other good things. So I'll just shut up now.
Well, we'll be back in with February's Gazette with a nice new shiny roadmap too, and looking a little bit further in the future. That's what I'd love to do. Each month when we're on this stream and we're in the Gazette, the roadmap creeps forward a little bit too. Right, I want to ask some questions about Steam. I also want to shout out that I think I've seen a few people compare MikeD to Mark Ruffalo. So that's a nice comparison.
Yeah. Hell yeah, I'll take that.
Okay, first question. How is the Steam release supposed to bring in new players? I'm not following how that will work.
Well, and again, most of this stuff I think, is easily researchable online, but I think now after the whole CB19 thing, Steam has access to like 120 million monthly active users. Like the amount of people that are going to see the game, and I think a lot of them are going to be people that are like, oh man, I remember playing that. They're going to think back to all those, and we're just going to refresh their memory and be like, we're still here, we're stronger than we've ever been for sure. And come back into the game and give it a shot. I mean, again, I don't know off the top of my head, but what was it, like 250 million accounts made over the last 20 years? Like people, this is going to be a great way to reacquire players who have just, that this is going to be like, oh my God, look at that. And then there are tons of new players. We saw it with RuneScape launching on Steam. Tons of new players that are like, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to try this out. And now they have a much bigger player base because of it. So that's how we're going to get new players. And they might not be new, fresh new players, but there's going to be a lot of players that are going to be like, oh man, this is really, I remember how much I love this game. I want to get back into it. And that's how you're going to see it.
Same thing mobile did. When you launched on mobile, a lot of people rediscovered the game and said, oh my God, I can't believe old school's a thing. Didn't know it existed. That's the big thing you get, is you get it in front of more eyes, honestly.
And that's again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, old school everywhere, right? This game is so iconic. It's got a classic vibe to it that's just really cool. And I think that there's plenty of people out there that for the first time are seeing it and playing it will be like, oh man, I get this, I understand this, and they're going to stick around. And we go to new regions, we go to new platforms, we go to new channels. Steam's like a channel where you sell your game. So we go to these places and we drive new players into the game to try it out, or again, reacquire old players to come back and give us a spin again. So that's where we grow as a game, as a player base.
So you mentioned I think you'll be pleased to know as well, the old school everywhere line. That's one we used a lot in our comms today. So you did well picking up that tagline. We still borrow from that.
It was not. It was not. It is not an I situation. The whole team getting together to work on this.
Another question on the spot. More about everywhere rather than Steam itself right here. We see lots of people talk about, can we add new servers to Asian areas or South American areas? Do you think that's likely to happen?
That's all part of the plan. If we're going to go to these places, we have to support that, right? So again, I don't want to say, oh yeah, we're getting a server and it's going to be floating on an island that we build off of the coast of China. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm saying is we need to make sure that we give players access and that they have a good ability. But our game is not necessarily one that is super intensive in that regard. So yes, that already has been discussed on how we would tackle that, but it is, that's in our future. We got to tackle, we do Steam first, then we do other things, then we go into other regions. Like we're formulating the plan right now, and over the next X number of years, how we achieve those goals. But this is a long-term plan.
Sweet, sounds good to me. Aiza's in the chat saying, leak the plan. No, Aiza, no. You've just come back to us.
The more I talk, the more likely I am going to say something stupid, and I'm going to have to eat, crap for it. But...
All right, well, there's 6 minutes left, so hopefully you can keep it tight just a little longer. Next question, and it's one I've seen a lot, so I want to answer it, and I want to answer it quite candidly. Robert asks, is Steam just for new players? Is there any reason why existing players should use it over RuneLite? I'm thinking candidly, probably not if you're an existing player. I will keep on using RuneLite myself. That said, I'm probably going to log into Steam just to unlock the achievements, and then I'll probably go back to using RuneLite. This is going to be great for us, like we said earlier. New players and returning players. they're going to see old school front and center on Steam, and they're going to come back into the game. We're not under any illusion that like you want the features, and we want the features too that third-party solutions offer. So I think, and hopefully I won't get told off for that kind of quite candid answer, but
we want you to carry on playing the game. Like, you already are playing the game. It's like,
How you do
it doesn't make a grand bit of difference to us, like if you're jumping on the Steam client or carry on where you are now. I mean, what I'd like to say is like it is that thing that pulls in a lot of new eyeballs. It's a lot of new players that could sign up the game because it's got a presence on Steam. Like, it's great that if you could support us on that. Like, it's great, and we've got such a great community who sing our praises on the internet all the time, especially about us as a dev team, about how honest and open we are when we talk to you guys. We say it on, especially when it comes up like on Reddit or on Twitter, outside of our sphere, you know, outside of the 07 subreddit. And you see it coming up on gaming subreddits, etc. So many nice words are said about us, and that's the thing that can make a huge difference, is being that clear, being welcoming to the new people who come on board. I remember mobile release and everyone jumping into tutorial areas and help, like at the start of at Lumbridge, to welcome new people, give them welcome packs and all that sort of stuff. That's the stuff that's where our players can contribute and make a huge difference. And it's amazing to me that the community do this sort of thing. Let's
not forget the daily champions as well. Seeing those new players rock up with the most ridiculous of gear and just asking the dumbest questions. I can't wait to see that again. So another question I got, which is kind of related to this, is from in the chat, Chan Roy asked, why is it important for us to add old school to the Steam wishlist? And I guess it's probably fresh from the other question, which is why should I add it to the wishlist if I'm not going to use it? All we can say is that if you do that, it would help us massively, because you know, algorithms and rankings and whatnot, lots of activity, lots of eyeballs on the game. So we'd love for you to help us out. You can make our launch, you can make our launch really successful.
Well, that's it. That's the reason, right? Again, help us get as many eyeballs on it as possible. And when you wish list, you're helping that.
Another question in the chat about Steam. How are you going to handle Steam platform as a community tool? A good question. For us, it's we're going to treat it like another normal platform. Like, they've got a community hub. We're going to share all the news and all blogs over there. It's pretty easy for us to do. We'll engage with people who reply to those things. We'll engage with the forums. We'll engage with reviews. So quite lightweight. Nothing radical. No massive changes. It's just more players to talk to, more players to listen from. Now, we are coming to the end of the stream. I think by the time we run through the announcements, that'll take us to the hour. Before I run through the announcements, Mike or Mod Kieren, any, not to sound sinister, but any last words?
Just keep doing what you're doing. Feedback, talk to us. Like Kieren said, there's no community like this. You know, the wiki, the Reddit, you make this possible. So please keep doing what you're doing.
There's nothing.
I
think that would take that as a, I agree.
There's so many amazing communities out there. I mean, be it the wiki team, incredible. Be it people like RuneLite, who are putting, through no benefit to themselves really, putting that effort into that client that a lot of you like to use. It's amazing how much people care about this game and want it to be a game that continues to succeed, that they can continue to spend time in, and we'll do our best to keep on looking after it and keep on taking it forward. So
that's lovely. That's a good way to end. But before we do, we'll go for the announcements again.
That sounds so sarcastic.
I'm not being sarcastic. I can't help it. You know what I'm like. I'm just not that. I wish I could be, you know, more emotional and more communicative. I've heard that a lot lately, but never mind. All right, that was an in joke. Mike liked it. That's good. Okay. Exclamation mark game update. You can learn more about the recent update. Yesterday's game update. Shades of Morton saw a lot of new content. The areas have changed. New shades to fight, new chests to loot, and new rewards, new armors. So exclamation mark game update to learn more. Ooh, exclamation mark equipment. This is all about the equipment rebalance. We know it is a very controversial topic and it's still ongoing. You gave us tons of feedback. We put out a new blog. You gave us tons of feedback and we're working through it. So early next week, we'll be publishing a new blog with a new proposal. In the meantime, please hop into the test worlds, get your hands on the gear in the way you've proposed it, stats-wise, and keep sharing that feedback. Lastly, exclamation mark Steam. As we've spoken about quite a lot on the stream, Old School is coming to Steam, February 24th. We would love it if you would help us on Steam, help our launch by adding the game to your wish list. Right, shall we call it? 6 o'clock on the dot, perfectly efficient. Right, okay, let's end it. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube or Steam. We'll see you next week.
All right.
See you all.